Hi everybody! Hopefully this video will give you some tips on how to annotate a poem. Annotate is a fancy Greek word that means make a copy of a poem super messy with lots of jotted down ideas. It's really an art, not a science, but let's dive right in. First of all, always read the poem out loud, and then read it out loud again, and then read it out loud again. What you're listening for are any words or phrases that stand out to you. If you don't understand them, so what? Underline them. If they stand out to you for a reason you don't understand, it's perfectly okay to just be like, I like the way that sounds. That is a perfectly fine reaction. So let's start by reading this poem by Edgar Allan Poe out loud. It's called To Helen. Helen, thy beauty is to me like those Nicean barks of yore, that gently over a perfumed sea the weary, wayward wanderer bore to his own native shore. On desperate seas long wont to roam, the hyacinth hair, thy classic face, thy naiad airs have brought me home to the glory that was Greece, and the grandeur that was Rome. Lo! In yon brilliant window niche, how statue-like I see thee stand, the agate lamp within thy hand. Ah, Psyche, from the regions which are holy land. Okay, read it a couple more times to yourself until you can get through it without stumbling over things. Think about what you notice. Any words or phrases stand out to you? Yes, me. The weary, wayward wanderer bore. Lots of W's in that phrase. I think I like it. Hey, are there any words or allusions that you don't know? Yes, barks. Barks like a dog or barks like a tree? Actually, it's neither. It's barks like boats. We've got allusions, references, in this case, classical allusions. We've got Helen, Nicean. We talk about Greece and Rome, Psyche, Holy Land, Naiad airs. What's going on here? Sometimes in a poem, you just start with lots of questions. Who is this Helen? Nicean barks of yore, what? Native shore. Whose native shore are we talking about? Holy Land. I know I've heard of the Holy Land, like people go on pilgrimages there. What does that have to do with Helen and Greece and Rome? Okay, start by defining anything. Yes, dictionary, look words up. Want, W-O-N-T. It's not a misspelling. It's an old-fashioned way of saying accustomed to. We've got Rome, hyacinth. Hyacinth, I'm going to point out because sometimes the definition of a word is not necessarily how it's used in a poem. Hyacinth here, yes, technically a type of lily, but in this case, he's actually referring to kind of a reddish-brown color. So it's just my cautionary note that even though you look something up, it might not necessarily be what the author intends. You might get through this poem later on and be like, oh, he's not talking about a lily, he's talking about a color. Because of course, hyacinth hair, lily hair doesn't make much sense. Okay, we did that, move on. You can also think about your allusions and what they might or might not mean. Some of them you might not get, quite frankly. Helen, though, do you know any famous Helens? The one that comes to mind is Helen of Sparta or Helen of Troy from Greek mythology. She was the most beautiful woman in the world, right? And so because he starts off with Helen, thy beauty is to me, okay, he's probably talking about Helen of Sparta. So one mystery solved. Now, forgive my incredibly bad scan. However, the second thing you want to do to try and illuminate the meaning of the poem is try to paraphrase it. This is easier said than done with short poems. Don't do it to the Raven or anything. But go through line by line. Okay, Helen, thy beauty is to me, like those Nicean barks of yore. Helen is as beautiful as some boats. Okay, I know it sounds very childish, but that's really what he's saying. Or I guess technically barks of yore. Helen is as beautiful as some old boats. Okay, go through, even if it's making no sense, just line by line by line. So then once you do that, you would get the message that he's comparing Helen's beauty to some old boats that carried somebody home over a perfumed sea. Okay, all right. In the second stanza, the narrator has been brought home to the beauty of the glory of ancient civilizations. Okay, so Helen of Troy, kind of casting back to Greek and Roman times. Is the author picking up on the beauty of classical literature? And then finally, what's going on there? Helen is a statue. What does lo mean? Who's Psyche? This one is still a little bit murky, but at least you are starting to get the message of the poem. Okay, other things to look at. Figure out who is speaking. Is this Poe? Is he pretending to be somebody else? Sometimes you do have poets who take on the personage of somebody from history and write from that point of view. In this one, it's probably Poe just talking about something that is on his mind. What is the speaker's tone? Ooh, that's a really good question. Not angry, not sad, not delighted, not really nostalgic, not really any of these. How would you characterize his tone in this poem? And going along with that, as a narrator, is he trying to tell you something? Is he making any judgments about anything? Is he saying, this is bad, this is good? Okay, so figure out your own answers to those questions. And who is the intended audience? Who is he writing this for? Kind of an interesting question here, because your first inclination is probably to say, well, he's writing it for anybody. But look at the title, To Helen. So is there an actual Helen? And that's a little bit of a mystery with this poem. I won't get into it too much, but there might be kind of a meaning behind this poem, or an intended audience that we don't really know without researching Poe's life. All right, now we got lots and lots of stuff. This is a much better scan. Notice how incredibly messy this is getting. Doesn't it look awesome? And yes, this is absolutely what every single poem looks like when I annotate it. An annotated poem is just a place to contain your thoughts and your questions. And sooner or later, it all kind of starts to come together and make sense. I like to use different colors just for fun. So the structure. Okay, we're looking at stanzas, lines. Go ahead, count some syllables. Look at, are lines indented? Are they left justified? Why? Rhyme scheme, I've actually got that on the next slide. You're looking to see if there is a consistent structure. Is there any enjambment? Yes, plenty. Psyche from the regions which are holy land. That means it's meant to be read as one line without a pause. You're also looking for literary devices like similes and metaphors. Helen, thy beauty is to me like those Nicean barks of yore. Simile, right there. Figure out the word choices. What does he mean by lo? It's kind of an antiquated way of saying, hey, y'all. But it totally fits with the poem because the poem has all these classical allusions, and lo is a word from antiquity. Perfect word choice. And then figure out how you feel about the poem. It is a perfectly legitimate response to say, this is the dumbest poem I've ever read. It's also legitimate to say, I love this poem. I don't know why. There's just something about it I really like. I don't get it, but I like it. But go beyond that as well and try to think about what the poem sparks inside of you. I read this and I think of an old book I had as a child about Helen of Sparta. And so that kind of casts me back to these Roger Lancelin green books that I loved so much. And so it reminds me of my childhood in a way, sitting in an olive tree reading this book. That's a very personal reaction. And something I forgot to mention here in number 6 is you're also looking for these bend your ear devices. Where do you see some alliteration? Hyacinth hair, that phrase that stood out to me initially, weary, way-worn wanderer. That's some awesome alliteration. So you're looking for all of these devices. Absolutely read back through it numerous times because some of these you will not pick up on the first go round, especially consonants and assonants. You have to keep going through to find those. Finally, I think I have my rhyme scheme here. I'm just constantly writing down more things that I find. And you will find that as you go through it, words stand out to you more and more, and a little light bulb will go off and you'll be like, oh, Nicaean, is that casting back to Nike, the Greek word for victory? Are these victorious ships? Sometimes there's not a yes or no answer. It's about your interpretation. Here I annotated the rhyme scheme. I have another video where you can learn all about that. And I like to write the rhyme scheme going down the edges of the poem, but also like in a corner or something that I haven't completely covered with chicken scratch yet, so that I can compare the rhyme schemes of each stanza. Do we have a consistent rhyme scheme here? No. Kind of typical Poe. No, we do not, but we do have a consistent organization of number of lines per stanza. So the poem has that going for it. So really, annotation is just a way to get you to focus on all the aspects of a poem and to analyze it for structure, content, and literary devices, but also figuring out how do you feel about it. All right, have fun annotating poems. Bye-bye.